my goal is just to simply give a background. I've been asked to give a little bit of a background on the program, talk a little bit about what was included in each of 2010, 2014, 2020, and then what's in the proposed 2026, just from a matter of fact standpoint. So I figure you are all engaged citizens, and might have already seen the exact presentation that was on November 17th, that I gave at the Capital Planning Committee. So rather than just come and redo that same exact presentation, I have an updated version, which frankly is still about ESER. So we still talk about what's in each of the 2010, 2014, 2020, and proposed for 2026, but there's about 4 times more pictures and less words. So hopefully I can successfully share my screen, and I will get that going. All righty. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, that is a good start. I can't see you now that I'm sharing my screen, so I'll try to split the screen so I can see you guys. But if you want to ask a question, feel free. I'll do my best to just go with the flow. There, I've modified my screen now so I can see smaller versions of you, albeit. But feel free to just, it's not interrupting at all. Speak up if you have questions or if something I say is unclear. And this is it. Earthquake Safety and Emergency Response Bond Program, City and County of San Francisco. All right, now can I advance the slides? There we go. So as I'm sure you all already know, really earthquake safety and emergency response is about exactly what it says: upgrades and improvements to capital infrastructure, which can be all sorts of flavors within the known, within the overall umbrella of first responder facilities, improving San Francisco resiliency, and allowing the city to respond quickly to major earthquakes or other disaster events, and to be able to recover in the aftermath. The program did originate, as I had mentioned, in 2010, was second release in 2014, which we'll talk a little bit about each of those releases, and then 2020. The next consideration will be on the ballot in June of 2026. And as I mentioned, there's the, I didn't put that there. Somebody else created the slide deck, but my first exposure was as the general contractor for the project on your lower right, the San Francisco Public Safety Building over in Mission Bay. So start off with the 2026 proposed slate, just because I figured that's of most interest, and then we can go back through the history. There's $535 million in the proposed program. That is down from 2026, which was, I'm sorry, from 2020, which was $628.5 million. For reference, 2014 was $400 million, and the original in 2010 was just over 412, I believe, $412.3 million. Within the overall program proposed for 2026, there's $130 million set aside for continuing on with the emergency firefighting water system managed through PUC. There's $100 million set aside for the fire department focused on replacing, repairing, or upgrading seismically unsafe neighborhood fire stations. There's $72 million set aside for police stations and support facilities. $33 million set aside for what's considered capital maintenance or critical building repairs on public safety facilities. $200 million set aside specifically to replace a 110-year-old seismically unsafe bus yard with a modern bus maintenance and storage facility to help ensure Muni has buses available to provide transit and to prevent the bus storage from getting collapsed in the event of an earthquake. That totals $535 million. So here's a quick high-level summary. I'll give a little extra color commentary, but then I've got some detailed slides as well on the program's history. As I mentioned, 2010, sort of the largest tranche in 2010 was that public safety building, which housed both police and fire facilities, as well as some emergency services. Fire Station 5, there was also Fire Station 16 improvements. And in 2010, there was also 71 separate smaller projects dedicated to improving neighborhood fire stations around the city. 2014, again, that was a $400 million program, and the primary largest single projects were the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and then the Traffic Company and Forensic Services Division. That project also included Fire Station 35 at Pier 22.5, also known as the floating fire station. It involved 3 combined projects that touched 7 neighborhood police stations as well. And I should have said, going back, the 2010 program is closed out. The money is spent. The 2014 program is largely, it's 95%-ish closed out. Some of the things that happen along the way is, when bond monies come in, they also can earn, they can accrue interest on the program. And so while that $400 million program, that was the authorized bond sales in 2014, it actually accrued an additional $15 million. I'm not the financial expert, so there's limits on what you can accrue, but it is understood as you manage the money, and there are limits. You're supposed to deploy it as quickly as you can, but there will always be earnings. And so that 93 to 97% just depends on whether you're using the $400 that was sold or the accrued value, which I think rose to 415 million. But again, they're closing out the last of those projects. And then 2020, that was a $628.5 million program. You see in the photos a completed 911 call center. You see plans for the Department of Training for the fire department. That project is under contract, so those funds are encumbered. The contract is written, and the project is slated to get underway. There's also a major project for the police that's Ingleside, which has a historic preservation component. And again, that project is in the phases. It's got a general contractor on board, and it is in the process of spending the money per se, but the contract is written. And then there was also Mission Police Station seismic upgrade that is largely complete. And of course, the photo on the right didn't get many pictures. Maybe I'm, as a public works employee, more focused on buildings, but certainly we'll have more information and some photos of what was originally called in the original programs the auxiliary fire water system is now the emergency water firefighting system. There's some more of these pictures that we promised. So here's a photo of some firefighters testing out, demonstrating one of the completed sections of the emergency firefighting water system. Here's a photo of the aforementioned fire station number 35 at Pier 22.5. That was part of the 2014 program. Here are some of the key accomplishments in addition to giving me an excuse to give some more photos along the way. Aforementioned Fire Station 16, that was included in the original 2010 program, pictured here below. So here's more of that summary level detail that I've been running through from the original 2010 program. You can see here what was approved for sale was the 412.3 million. And then that list of projects that I had mentioned before, the public safety building, Fire Station 16, Fire Station 5, and then an amalgamation of 71 separate neighborhood fire station improvement projects. Some of those projects are summarized here, where you've got roof replacements, shower renovations, window repairs, mechanical system upgrades, leaky envelopes being repaired, generator replacements, those primary apparatus bay doors, and an entire envelope improvement on the Fire Station 31 project. And then there's a photo of a sample of a roof replacement going on. The 2014 program, as I mentioned, was authorized bond sales of 400 million. And again, the focus on expanding and modernizing emergency facilities. Some of the highlights here, as I've mentioned, the Fire Station 35 at Pier 22.5, the Traffic Company and Forensic Services Division, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. There was also 26 projects involving critical systems, just like I had mentioned in the 2010 program. Not all of the improvements are full buildings that get all the headlines. Much of the improvements are actually bundled smaller projects across multiple neighborhood police and fire stations, including fire stations here, 2, 14, 19. Carryovers from the prior bond had started that program, and it continued on through 2014. Boiler replacements, part of those MEP upgrades, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing that I'd mentioned before. And then specifically for the fire department, for the police department, I had mentioned that there were 7 different police stations impacted over some bundled projects. And so that total value of those projects here, you can see, is 37.5 million. And ultimately, the 9 districts and 3 supporting facilities Sorry, I had 7. It was a 9, but that was the district stations, but then also 3 of their support facilities that aren't considered neighborhood police stations for a total of 12 different facilities that were improved. And in addition to the upgrades I mentioned before, there was also ADA upgrades as well, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Special projects included pistol range roof repairs, park exterior repairs, central expansion feasibility study, and the Bureau and Property Control Study, which you'll see more about carrying over into the next bond. And here we are in 2020. Some of those projects I had mentioned included the completed 911 call center. The Division of Training is now, again, under contract in earnest and starting out its construction here and I think the groundbreaking is next month, and then you'll see that project proceeding, but the funds are considered encumbered since the contract is written and it's underway. You also have the Ingleside Police Station that is proceeding, as well as the completed improvements, which were a seismic upgrade on the Mission Street improvements. So overall, that bond is about, you'll see different numbers depending upon, again, are you talking about the bonds authorized, how much is sold, but there's about 60% of the overall authorized bonds that have now been either money spent or money authorized, encumbered, but in the process of being spent as the construction contracts proceed. I'll repeat the emergency water details because it's on the next slide. So here's a little bit of a summary between 2010, 2014, and 2020, some of the highlights at a high level. Again, one of my disclaimers was I can speak a little bit more intelligently, having only been here 9 months, to the projects that are being delivered by Public Works. I have less details for things that are being handled by other sponsoring agencies, such as PUC in this case. But there are 30 completed cisterns new, 19 overall out of the 35 planned pipelines in their overall program. Pipelines and tunnels, have been completed. 6 out of the 11 physical plants completed, and they've had 12 assessments completed. The photo here, I think we like it because it's just a nicely paved road. That's a Public Works bias for nicely paved roads. But the brick ring shows visually the outline of the cistern below the road. And here's some additional photos. Just from the program, there's the Emergency Firefighting Water Station Pump 1 and a Twin Peaks reservoir. And then again, the slide of some of the firefighters testing, demonstrating a pipeline that had been completed. And then here's a couple of the visuals of the projects that we've been talking about a little bit. Fire Station 16, Fire Station 5, both of those delivered in the 2010 bond, and then Fire Station 4 as well. And then just because I can't get enough of the public safety building, I swear I did not put these pictures together, but that is a project I'm fond of for sure. And then the upcoming work, the completed work before we get to the remaining future projects that are underway. But this was from the 2014 bond, that traffic company and forensics division. That's what it wound up looking, the overall site. And then ahead. Focus shot of the entry for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, which was also part of the 2014 program. Close up, large format of the 911 call center, this is not a rendering, this is fully complete, hence the blurred data, which would be confidential on the back walls. Here's a shot, probably more for the skyline, admittedly, but here's work being completed on the roof as part of the Emergency Firefighting Water Systems Ashbury tank. Trying to go slow enough so you can actually see the pictures without boring you. And then the projects, as I mentioned, that are in the process of being delivered. Here's a rendering of the San Francisco Fire Department's DOT, or Division of Training, in the Bayview. This project is, again, under contract, and the formal groundbreaking is next month, but it is proceeding. And then Ingleside Police Station. This is a rendering. I apologize. There's probably some better views that are incorporating the new planned improvements, which would be the building on the right, plus the historically preserved portion of the project, which is on the left. But this is what's going on with Ingleside for the police station. It was part of the 2021 part of the 2020 bond, but both the DOT project and this project each had their challenges coming through COVID. But they are both on track now, under contract, and pushing forward. That is it for. I should leave it there. That is it for the presentation portion. I can tell you if I run back through um, the 2026. There was a question about the police station and Ingleside showing up twice. I'm not sure where that might have been, but for 2026, the police funds are primarily set aside for the Taraval station, not the Ingleside station, Taraval station. And then there's the property controls division, which has a phase two. The phase one and the prep work called the Surge Project to get ready for the Ingleside project are all happening as part of the 2020 program. There's also the fire stations. They are working with us to prioritize which fire stations they want to proceed with in the 2026 program. But the fire stations that had been identified at the time of the CPC meeting in November were 2, 7, 8, and 40. So I'll just pause there and I see questions. Deborah, do you want to pick?
Yes, we'll go in order. Jean, you're first.
Yeah, thank you very much for this information, but I have to confess, I am a little confused. I was under the impression that these three previous bonds were supposed to be spending money on something called an AWSS, which would bring water, which would be a secondary system to protect people from fires in case of an earthquake. And I thought that's where at least some of the bond money was supposed to be spent. But your rundown of all the expenditures says absolutely nothing about that. I know you've done some, building of cisterns and pipes, but not for the system, the secondary water supply system. In addition, I thought this was supposed to be under the auspices of the fire department or maybe the fire and the police department, and somehow or other it got into the hands of the PUC. I may have my history wrong, but could you help me understand what happened to the AWSS that I thought was the purpose of this original bond starting in 2010?
Yeah, well, what I can tell you is that each of the bonds, see the slide? Am I still sharing? Can you see the slide on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so each one of the bonds from 2010, 2014, and 2020 had a component, just like I showed you the menu on the 2026, where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buckets or categories. Each one of the bonds had a similar breakdown. So for 2010, for example, the piece that was set aside for the then known as AWSS, Auxiliary Water Supply System, that
Right.
bond was authorized as 420.3 million of bonds for the overall program, and
Right.
105, or roughly a quarter of that program, was set aside for the Auxiliary Water Supply System.
But none of it was spent on the AWSS. Why not?
That's not true, but
Well, we're not getting an AWSS. I've been told zero has been spent. So what was done with the 2020 $100 million? What was done to start the construction of the AWSS?
so again, I've only been with the city 9 months, but this slide that you're looking at shows the summary of the primary milestones. I am sure if you'd
None of
like
which
an
are AWSS. Cisterns are for the second are for the ESER. The
you
AWSS
can
doesn't
you
have
can
cisterns.
you can yell at me all you want. I have been with the city for 9 months. I know that each of the three bond programs from 2010, 2014, and 2020 had a specific set aside allocation for either AWSS or for now known as the Emergency Water Firefighting System.
Which are two very
Okay,
different
there we go.
systems.
Deborah,
And
I
so
can end my time here now if she's
Okay.
just going to keep yelling at me.
I'm not yelling. I'm trying to get an answer
You're
to a very
interrupting me when I'm
legitimate
trying to give you
question.
answers.
It sounds like there was a bait and switch. There was an AWSS, and now you're saying, well, the AWSS
I'm
is
not saying anything other than each bond has an allocation. It says exactly what was included, and there's an audit for what projects were completed for each of the bonds. That's all public information. If
okay.
you want that
Maybe.
information, it's all
Let's
publicly
go on to the
available.
next question because,
Okay, Lisa and John might be able to answer this
okay,
question. Thank you.
Charles, you're next.
I'm sorry, is that me?
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Okay, I believe we have a caller online, and I believe that's Eileen Boken. Eileen, if you would like to ask a question of Scott, would you please do so now?
Okay, Charles, all of my questions were pre-submitted, but thank you for asking. And Scott, thank you very much for coming here and for presenting at the Capital Planning Committee. Thank you.
Oh, it's always nice to see you, Eileen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question of my own.
Okay, Charles.
I noticed that in the 2026 bond, there is money for Potrero Yard. The money for Potrero Yard is a lot more than the money for the ESER. Isn't it more important to have pipeline built with water flowing so that in the event of a fire, the fire department can put out the flames rather than dealing with a large shed?
Well, without doing a disservice to your question, I explained my role. My role is as the deputy director for project delivery. I don't get to decide what items go on the bond or how much money goes into the bond. Those things all happen in a city process outside of my purview. All I do, if the money gets allocated, if the bonds get approved and they get authorized, some of the projects come to my group to make sure they happen, to make sure we're delivering on the value for what's in the program. I don't have any insight into how those tasks are selected or at which value.
Okay, I'm sorry, Scott, my bad.
No, no problem. No problem. Like I said, I don't want to do disservice to your question, but my purview is narrow to the delivery of projects that are part of an approved program.
Okay, thank you, sir.
George, you're next.
Hi, Scott. Very good presentation. I was hoping you could show the 2026 slide again so we could discuss that. I also go to all the CPC meetings. I believe I saw your presentation. Which at that time was quite good. And I was there last week when Dennis was there, and it was very interesting. I guess I can't see it, unfortunately, but
I'll reshare. Sorry, it stopped my sharing. How about now? Now?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
There you go.
My questions are very simple. What I see is you have five buckets basically, and I see in four of them there's kind of a little wiggle room. So money is a little bit at discretion to spend a little bit differently. I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm just saying it's written in the bond. And I've been watching the bond being made the whole time. So it's made me question. And the only thing that's not um, any wiggle room would be the $200 million for the Muni car barn, which when you go to the Finance and Budget Committee will show that it costs actually the beginning of a project that costs basically $1.4 billion over the next couple of years. And to me, it's kind of snuck in there a little bit. It's because at one point it had housing, it still has housing units. There's a whole bunch more to it. But this is where it starts. But my question, I'll just keep it very simple. Um, why is there like um, critical building repairs and improvements at public safety facilities? It's so vague for $33 million. It could go anywhere. I know you said you weren't a finance guy, but these things are so open, and I am a finance guy. So I was curious what why the language was so loose on this particular ESER bond, and I've been involved in at least three of the prior ESER bonds, and they were a little bit tighter. Do you have any thoughts on that, or this go back to newness?
Sorry, it goes back to what?
Just being new, and
Oh,
be more of a
newness.
builder
You
than
know, um, I don't have any experience with the prior bond processes, and this one I really got to the city, almost at the time this started becoming a topic. So, I mean, I can tell you that there are many projects that have more than one source of funding, and so whether the ESER is the sole funding for a project or whether it's just a layer of contributing funding from other sources, leveraging other sources, it depends on each project. But when it comes to the one line item you mentioned specifically that I do know more about, which is critical building repairs and improvements at public safety facilities, there's always more demand than funds available. And so what I have gotten used to, whether it's the bundled improvements on police facilities or the bundled improvements on neighborhood, fire facilities, or whether it's that item for critical building repairs, really it's just a function of looking at the demand, which greatly exceeds the funding that's available, and trying to work with the clients, the police leaders, the fire leaders, or their other, the other critical buildings that are within the city portfolio, and figuring out how we can add the most value, what we can accomplish that's, going to take the city the furthest for the funds that are available. I haven't gotten any sense that there's gamesmanship in that, but that's
no,
a piece that I got exposed to.
I don't believe there's gamesmanship either. I'm more concerned with passing the bond, and when you leave things like that in the bond, it becomes easier not to get the two-thirds vote because it allows people to say they're not going to spend the money on public safety facilities. It's just a kind of an open door. That's all I'm saying.
And well, I understood. I don't. It's outside of my scope of purview,
Yeah,
really.
no, but
M-
no, I
My
just want
involvement has been to make sure the projects they do identify, the very specific projects that will be delivered through Public Works, or at least the plan is to make sure that we've got a good basis of the scope assumptions and a good basis for the timing of when they could be delivered, so that we can do our best to make sure that there's a reasonable um, alignment of the funding that's being carved out within the bond for those uses and our ability to deliver on that promise.
I want to thank you for your work on this project.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I came out of retirement specifically because I wanted to try and do my part to help city I love.
And next question is either Lisa or John. And you're muted.
Takes two of us to find the mute button, Deborah. Scott, John Crabtree. I'll try to stay very much within your scope and purview here. In the 2014 bond, there was some $54 million that was directed or allocated. Allocated is a bad word, but that was committed to the Emergency Firefighting Water System, or AWSS. Do you have I might have missed it in your presentation, but do you have a slide where that 2014 50 million went?
I don't have that much detail in what's in front of me right now. I was able, because it was in the presentation I gave, even though it's before my time with the city, the original CPC presentation from 11/17. It goes so far as to have a slide for each one of the bond programs with the categories, but not the specific list of projects at the time that the bond was passed. But I do know there's an audit of all the money, right? Every year there's an audit of the money as it's being spent, so that there's a clear trail for where the money was actually spent. I just don't have all that at my fingertips right now.
You don't even have a slide in here that says, 2014, here are the general categories or anything like that?
I do. It's not in this presentation, but I mean, I could read off to you, just like the slide that you're looking at, right? I can read off to you the buckets, the main buckets or tranches of money that were allocated
But
by
nothing that
each
goes
bond.
below that. So 54 million was the allocated number for emergency firefighting water.
For 2014, it was
2014.
specifically 57,657.
Okay. Thank you for the correction. But you don't have anything more granular than that. That's
No,
just the top
it's
line.
certainly available. I mean,
No,
I'd
no,
be
I'm
happy
saying
to
in your
chase that down for all
presentation.
of you.
In your presentation.
No.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Are there any
No
more
problem.
questions? Oh, Scott, could you please send me these slides?
Sure. I'd have to figure out just how to transfer them to, or I'll send a PDF. It's just with all
Okay.
the pictures, it's a
Yeah.
very large file,
Okay. Oh, thank
but
you.
I'll figure it out.
And thank you very much for coming and presenting. And you're welcome to leave or stay as long as you like. Oh, George,
Awesome.
you have another question?
Well, I'm really curious what Eileen was going to ask. Could Eileen ask one question?
She had three questions. If you'd like, I sent the responses back
Oh,
to
okay.
Deborah. Since
Okay.
Deborah was kind enough to send me the questions in advance, I sent her the responses
Oh,
back.
And I
all
can
right.
forward it. I can forward that to you, George.
Because Eileen is
Yes,
pretty sure.
yes, George, I did get the, thank you for being very proactive, Scott. I did send three pre-submitted questions and they were all answered in advance. So we can share those later, but Scott, thank you very much.
No problem.
I think we've talked to most everybody about our campaign. We created this campaign to oppose passage of the June 2026 ESER bond. That's Proposition A on the ballot. And the basic reason is we've spent much of the last year sort of pounding on a table about the importance of the auxiliary water supply system and how it has never been extended into the western and southern neighborhoods. 15 neighborhoods, about almost two-thirds of the city, geographically, a little more like 60% by population, are unprotected for post-earthquake um, conflagration and firestorm, unprotected by the high pressure, saltwater, uh, seismically resilient pipelines, high pressure hydrants that were built in response to the 1906 earthquake, 113 years ago now that first initial set of hydrants and system was built. We've never had that protection out here. 113 years ago, we didn't have city out here. We didn't have people living out here, so that was the reason they didn't do it initially. But the reason why they haven't done it in the last generation is another question altogether. And the one thing we've banged on the table about is for 16 years since the 2010 transfer of the AWSS system, jurisdiction, control, ownership of, from SSFD to the PUC. From that point in time, 16 years later, after the passage of three bonds, this would be the fourth one, and some 312 million. Actually, according to Scott, maybe my math's a little bit, maybe it's even a little closer to 315 million. But not to digress, 312 million specifically set aside to expand AWSS into the unprotected neighborhoods, and yet we have zero hydrants out here in 16 years, 0 miles of pipe built into the unprotected neighborhoods. When you look at these reports, and you run down through them as Scott was describing, or as I've been doing for some months now, what you see is every single time, Gene, to your question, every single time there's an inflection point, every single time there's a prioritization to be done, it's sided with doing something other than expanding AWSS into the west side and the southern neighborhoods. Every single time there was an opportunity for the city to say, okay, $102 million out of the first the 2010 bond for AWSS expansion. Let's start building some pipe. Let's get a system plan. No, no, no. Let's spend it on cisterns. And Gene, the direct answer to your question was 30 million in the 2010 bond, 30 million for cisterns, 36 million for pipes and tunnels, which the presentation just showed, but 19 out of 35 have been completed in their work on. That's pipes and tunnels in the old system in the north and east part of the city. And then 36 million for pump stations to do repairs to the pump station 1 and 2. That's where all that first $100 million went. The second $50 million from 2014 is a little bit more of a mystery. Apparently, most of it went into studies about how to do this, how to actually get this done. And then in 2020, a new administration, a new mayor, a new ESER bond, and a brand new promise that $156 million was going to go into bringing AWSS to the western and southern neighborhoods that are currently unprotected or still unprotected. And yet, 6 years later, and that money's being has been or is being rapidly spent, we still have zero hydrants, 0 miles of pipe. I mean, I think, Gene, the direct answer to your question is the city has chosen a path that walks away from bringing post-earthquake firefighting water protection to the western and southern neighborhoods. I can't find it in my heart to try to describe to you why, but that's absolutely the policy choice that they've made to prioritize other things rather than do this thing. And this is, for me, the number one reason why I am opposed and encouraging everyone else to vote no on this 2026 ESER bond. The city needs to reset. 16 years of bad policy and prioritization, 16 years of bad choices, and 16 years of abandoning the public safety of the western and southern neighborhoods is enough. It's time to vote no, and I should
Yeah.
turn it back over to you and be
No,
quiet.
no, you're hitting all the high points. I mean, I think when we say reset, I mean, the name of our committee is Fire Protection for All. So equal fire protection for all. And it's really around, we're not against fire protection. We actually want to give our firefighters all the tools they need. The number one thing that you need to fight a fire is water. And so this should really be the priority. And there should be a bond that basically prioritizes that doesn't put in pet projects, that doesn't have that wiggle room. It should be extending the AWSS, which, as John mentioned, can pull salt water, so a virtually unlimited amount of water, rather than using our potable drinking water, which will be a problematic approach. Both in terms of the amount of water, we'll run out of water, it'll exhaust our water for sanitation and create other health issues. I think the reservoirs we have five days of water supply, and we'll quickly run through that in a post-earthquake conflagration. I think what we're saying is, there's a lack of parity here. We've been paying our taxes. We've been, I think, entrusting City Hall to do what they say they're going to do. And I think they've set bad policy, and I think we need to reset and get a better bond in place with a shot clock to get done what we wanted to do and what protects us ultimately.
Lisa told me a story recently about someone in the Sunset talking to her at some meeting we were at, and they asked her, when are the people going to start trusting their government again? And she told them, well, the city government again. And she said, well, when the city stops lying to us. And I have to be perfectly honest, perfectly honest. I mean, I absolutely believe that's true, but over the last 10 days or so, it has become the crystallizing thing that has made me say opposition to this bond is where I'm all in. I'm putting everything into it. Let me just read one thing from the mayor of San Francisco wrote the proponents' ballot argument, and it was posted last week. You can all find it online too. And I just want to read one particular passage, one bullet point, strengthening San Francisco's emergency firefighting water system. The mayor says, Prop A upgrades and extends high pressure water lines, hydrants, and key connection points to improve reliability and coverage on the west side and in every neighborhood in every corner of San Francisco. This statement is flatly a lie. It's false. It's not true. Prop A, this bond would put $130 million. With $130 million, you couldn't get pipe across the sunset, let alone over to your place, Gene. You couldn't get it into the Richmond. Honestly, this bond will not cover every corner of the city. But not only is it false, the mayor knows it to be false because the mayor's been told by people like us, in fact, by us and others like us, the mayor's been told this is not true. This is a marketing statement and it is absolutely anathema. The voter information pamphlet is supposed to be the thing that voters in San Francisco can depend upon to learn the truth about the issues that are before them when they sit with their ballot and vote. This is a violation. This is an absolute falsehood foisted on the voters. It's wrong, it's untrue, and it's describing this thing as it's almost as if the mayor is saying, hey guys, I know that we promised you 3 other times for 16 years that we were going to do this, but this time we really mean it. We're really going to make it happen. And I think it's offensive. So for my sake, I just wanted to read that little bit of the proponent argument. It's as bad as it gets.
Deborah,
I'd like to
Deborah,
say something.
Sure.
This is Leanne from Diamond Heights, and I worked for the PUC for 15 years. In the days before 15 or 20 years ago, they used to attempt to appoint a general manager who at least had an engineering background. When Gavin Newsom ran for mayor the second time, he appointed all his opponents to high-paying department head positions. He put Susan Leal, who didn't have a breadth of experience with the PUC, as head of the PUC, and ever since then, it's been one political appointee after another. At the moment, it's Dennis Herrera, who knows zero about the PUC. And so it's all part of the swamp. I'm sorry to see Lori diving into the swamp with both hands, but he's doing that. And you are absolutely right in what you're doing. The problem is you don't have to apologize for what you're doing or even be nice about it, because what's been going on is so wrong.
Deborah,
And I don't know if
Excuse me, isn't
I don't know if
she
Steve
trying to out of
Ritchie
order,
is
Lydia? Deborah?
Well, let's let the presentation finish and then we'll go to questions.
Oh, no,
Okay, go ahead.
We're done.
Yeah,
We're
please
okay.
go ahead.
That's
Please
go
fine.
ahead.
You know,
Fine,
people
Deborah.
had their hands raised.
Yes. Now,
Well, I have my hand raised too. Can we get Steve Ritchie back up to speak to us?
no, he wasn't feeling well and he said he was going to leave early. So Scott Anderson,
Not this time, but in the future.
if we, I don't know if we'll be doing this particular topic anytime soon because the election's in June.
okay, Heather has
Well,
Well, let's go. Heather had a question, but she wanted to
Thank you-
ask
thank
Scott
you, Susan,
Anderson,
for your
who's
comment.
no longer here.
Oh, well, that's really unfortunate because it was a technical question.
okay.
But I can tell you that in February, Captain McGowan presented to the SFPUC, I'm sorry, it was the Fire Commission, and he was discussing the status of this project. And one of the things he said is, next steps, we're going to continue the hydrologic modeling, which suggests as of February 2026, they haven't completed that study. The ability to create pressure to fight fires is fundamental to what this project is in the West Side. And using this approach throughout the city with a dual purpose water system with large diameter pipes. And we have an unproven approach to using these large pipes and using mechanized remote controlled valves, or possibly manually turned, but mechanized, to, in the event of an emergency, isolate a portion of the grid to create the 300 psi pressure. And I've been talking to a couple people, but water hammering is a big issue. One, when you change pressures dramatically, you damage pipes, and that's something I've seen in after fires in national parks. The other thing is you need a steady, consistent flow to the pipe, to the pump stations, so that you don't have any fluctuations in the volume going through, or air bubbles. So there's a lot to the hydrologic study, and if they haven't gotten to that point and they're ready to start building, I have a big question of how they can go forward without really that analysis of whether this will work and how it will work.
Okay, Jean,
Unfortunately, I didn't get to cut.
I'm sorry, did you call on me, Deborah?
Yeah, you're next.
Thank you. John, John and Lisa, I've talked to both of you several times, and I still have a question. It sounds as though there are maybe two different issues in this whole debacle. One is that you keep saying that the west side is not going to be protected. They're spending money in other parts of the city. But you also talk about how the money that they're spending, whether it's and I'm not sure I understand whether it's on the west side or the east side or both sides, is not being used for an AWSS system. It's being used for a dual supply water system, which involves cisterns and other things. So are we dealing with two problems, not just one? The fact that there is nothing being built in the Richmond in the Sunset, and that anything that's being built elsewhere is not an AWSS? Could you help me understand that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that's pretty close. So, I mean, one, there isn't any. Your first point is absolutely correct. There's not an AWSS being built in any of the unprotected neighborhoods, west side, the southern neighborhoods, any of those 15 plus neighborhoods. There,
And when
jump
you
in.
say auxiliary water supply or AWSS, it's non-potable water.
No,
Right.
I understand. It's a
Yeah.
secondary
Yeah.
system
Go
that's
ahead.
drawing
Sorry. I
water
was
from
just
the
gonna make that
ocean or the
distinction,
bay.
and
Right,
then
I
go with the
understand
dual.
that.
But the second part is what they want to do, and actually what Heather was just talking about, was to build this dual purpose co-benefits potable
No,
water
right. No, I
system.
understand that,
And
but
that
is
would
that
be on
being
the
built
that would be on
elsewhere?
the west side. But but again, that's theoretical, poorly unplanned,
But they
sort
have
of.
done some construction of some dual non-potable
No, they haven't done any
anywhere. Well, I
dual.
mean, he
No,
showed us
nowhere.
pictures of cisterns. Where are
They've
those?
done.
Just
They built cisterns, which is like a 19th century technology, not something new. They have built cisterns. They started doing that 2013. They did that with 2010 bond money. They put in 30 of them across initially 30, and then put more in later as well.
So with the cistern, Gene, you're going to need it's a tub of, it's basically a
No,
reservoir of
I
water. So
understand all
you're going
that,
to
and
need
it's not an AWSS.
it's
It's
not,
using
well,
potable water and
it's
everything else,
it would
but it's
need to
not in
be
the Sunset or the Richmond, right?
we do have some cisterns in the Sunset
Yeah.
that they put in. The problem is you're relying on capital equipment. So you need an engine truck at the cistern.
No, I
to pump it.
understand all of that
Yeah,
stuff. I
okay.
just thought that you're saying nothing, either ESER or AWSS is in the Sunset and the
We
Richmond.
got some cisterns. We did not get high pressure water.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, I've tried to, and
Yeah.
I understand what the point that I've created confusion for you. What I've tried to do is is to keep it very focused. What we're specifically talking about is they have built 0 high pressure hydrants and laid 0 miles of pipe.
Of
Those-
In
auxiliary
other words, they have
Those-
cisterns, but nothing to deliver the water.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And that's so you'd have to use pump engines, 2 for each cistern and the whole thing.
But
Yeah.
you would be opposed to even cisterns with those pump stations because it's potable water rather than water from the ocean.
The issue with cisterns is you have a limited amount of water and you're limited by the equipment. So you actually have to be able to have two trucks an engine truck and another truck. There's only 44 engine trucks in the city. So
Right.
if we expect more than 30 fires just in the Sunset, we're going to be, we're going to be in trouble.
But it's also the potable water problem if you have the
It is.
cisterns.
It is.
potable
It
The
water.
is.
water in the
It is.
cisterns is coming from Hetch Hetchy, not from the ocean. Is that correct?
I think it is non-potable. It's not that it's drinking water. The cistern water is not drinking water. It's just, but
Well,
it can be.
I hope it's
it
not
can-
drinking water after it goes in the cistern, at least.
Well, you
Yeah.
keep talking about potable versus non-potable water. What's in
Yeah.
the cisterns?
What's in the cisterns?
Yeah.
75,000 gallons of water.
What kind of water? Potable or non-potable?
I think
Hetch Hetchy or
some of it
ocean
is
water?
from the actual reservoir tanks, like Twin Peaks, which would be
Potable water.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the Twin Peaks reservoirs,
It's
the tanks
potable.
are filled with potable water too.
Right.
Okay.
But
Now, again, once the AWSS system kicks in, the pump stations draw ocean water. That's where the differentiation between, using salt water versus fresh water. But the tanks and reservoirs and all of that and the cisterns, they're filled with potable water. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to mention, I put 2 files in chat of arguments why we should vote no on A. One is from George Wooding and the other is from Eileen Boken. So please download those arguments for no on A. And we're not against fire safety. We're against this bond. We need a bond exclusively for
course we're not
AWSS
against
for the
fire
whole
safety.
city. To provide the maximum coverage, safest coverage for everyone. So we
Yeah.
just want a better bond. Does anyone have any other questions?
a little bit more light.
Glenn,
Yes,
Glenn has his hand raised.
yes, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I wanted to ask, could it be possible for us to hear the question that Eileen Boken made, the 3 questions and the answers, please?
I want to know too.
There you go. See, it's not
Okay.
secret stuff.
I learned so much from Eileen. You got to hear the questions.
Okay, I will pull up the email and I will read it. Okay. Her first question, has the EFWS 2000 Marin Pilot Project construction been completed and has the demonstration already taken place? Answer, this project is still in construction. Question 2, the Ingleside Police Station was listed on the 2020 ESER project list. It's now listed again on the 2026 ESER project list. Why is this? Answer, the Ingleside project is associated with the 2020 ESER bond. Maybe there was confusion, but the primary SFPD project associated with the PRO's 2026 ESER bond is the Terraville station. Question 3, what is the Clarendon supply line? What is the Clarendon supply project designed to accomplish? Answer, provides a new EFWS source pipeline. Construction has been completed. Those are Eileen's questions and the answers.
Thank you, Deborah.
Oh, you're welcome. And Heather, you have your hand up again?
Hi. Do we know how much is being the bond would go to Fort Mason fireboat manifold versus of the 130 from the spawn?
I don't know, Heather. I know that it's one of the things that will draw that pot of money down, but I don't know how much of it will go for that.
I think it's pretty large. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I
to
imagine.
suggest that this bond is going to do anything for the West Side. I mean, the West Side is funded by water bonds. The West Side initial phase and the contracts for A and B, my understanding are from water bonds and from the prior 2020 ESER bond. So I'm not sure the West Side project is getting any of the money from that 130. Does anybody else know?
Heather, are you saying what is the bond money for ESER only, as opposed to the whole bond? If that's your question, the answer is 130 million for the for the ESER AWAS system. Over 500 million is the price of the bond. So there'd be at least.
No, I'm asking about the granularity within the 130. I'm guessing based on the past manifold that the majority, if not all of that's going to go to the Fort Mason manifold, which is a big installation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thanks.
Charles, do you have a question?
No, I just tried to answer hers, but I didn't know the answer.
There's a question in chat from Todd. Is it at all viable to take the city to court regarding the ballot measure argument? I don't know the answer to that.
So, technically, yes. There is I want to say it's like a 10 business day period where you can make challenges to ballot arguments before they go to print. And
which ends on Friday.
Which ends on Friday. And there are different reasons you could potentially challenge them. I think we tried to do this with a couple of challenges in the special election to recall Joel and Gardio, and we're unsuccessful. And we think we had some valid points. And I think the director, John Arntz, refused to respond directly or to meet with us. And in fact, the message that was delivered was, you can file an injunction. And so there's no real remedy that you could actually put into place. One, without spending some money on legal fees, but secondly, it likely wouldn't play out before the election. So technically, yes, practically, no.
Okay. Glenn, you had another question?
Yes, I wanted to say during the time that the Great Highway was being closed, one of the statements that the Bicycle Coalition made, I think, was Lucas Lux. Yeah, I think he said there were 100,000 people on the weekend there, and that was patently false. And it was in the ballot argument, and there were people that had that particular statement taken out, I believe, or at least drew attention to it. So I do believe if there's statements saying that they're going to be providing fire safety throughout all of San Francisco, that would be a false statement and should be challenged.